Well, great. Well, appreciate everyone joining us for today's webinar. Really happy to have Jen here. We're going to go through introductions in a second. As we go through this, we're going to be talking a little bit about how to implement this academic operations platform, this integrated platform that CourseDog offers, and Jen's experience with this and our process and our team and our approach. Really looking forward to gaining some insights here from Jen's experience. And any questions come up, feel free to throw them in the chat. If they're relevant, we'll answer as we're going through. Otherwise, we'll have some time at the end to kind of recap and answer any questions that may be still out there. So again, appreciate everyone. So for introductions, Jen, I'll let you kick it off from your end first, and then I'll do mine.
Sure. My name's Jennifer Creech. I'm the Assistant Vice President for Student Success and Registrar here at Chaminade University. And that title includes on my team, we have academic advising, records, military, and veterans eligible students, transfer, institutional research, ADA and tutoring center, and orientation. So it really is a kind of a large umbrella of what we consider some of the student success initiatives and strategies on under the academic affairs umbrella.
Awesome. You're not busy at all.
Nope.
Thanks for that. And then, hi, everyone. My name is Mclaughlin. I'm a solutions engineer here at CourseDog. Been here for about 2 years, working in kind of the sales and solutions capacity. Before that, I was actually with another vendor in the space. So I've been in this kind of higher ed software implementation space for nearly 4 years now. So been involved with some implementations, some pre-sales conversations, customer success conversations, pretty much everything. So jack of all trades, if you will. But yeah, thanks for joining today, Jen, and would love to just kick it off with kind of a
Sure.
quick overview of Chaminade, what you're doing over there, and yeah, just high level stuff here.
Sure. So Chaminade University is a private Catholic Marianist institution located in Kaimuki, Honolulu. And we serve about approximately 2,200 degree seeking students. We have 6 academic units, and we have degrees ranging from associate's degrees to doctoral degrees. And we also serve students. We have a second chance Pell. So we have a program for incarcerated men in a facility here. We have a fully online program. We have military and traditional, we have a military and traditional student body as well. We are an Aleutian colleague school, and we have the full suite of CourseDog products. We purchased all of them in a bundle, and we can talk a little bit about that in kind of our thought process through why we chose to go that route.
Awesome. So yeah, for those of you that are somewhat new to CourseDog and everything, want to give just kind of a quick high level overview of who we are and what we do. So we really, everything we do at CourseDog kind of goes back to our founder story. So we were founded almost 4 years ago by 2 former computer science students, Justin and Nick here. What's really cool about the CourseDog mission is we were founded on this idea of kind of student success first, right? They come from a position of actually being impacted by these downstream effects of kind of these outdated manual processes. Things like not being able to register for courses they wanted to get into, curriculum not matching up with what's on the catalog. And once they kind of dug under the hood at their institution and realized how manual these processes were, and that this was kind of permeated throughout higher education, being computer science students, they thought, you know what, I think we can do something about this and kind of bring the 2 worlds together. So they really come to it with that kind of student success mindset first, and then the ability to help administrators in their process, free up strategic resources, free up time, and just allow things on campus to run more smoothly, which is why we call this kind of an academic operations platform, right? So why we're in existence, again, back to their story, we found a lot of these pain points and challenges kind of across the board in higher ed when it came to some of these processes like scheduling, curriculum management, publishing catalogs, things of that nature. Found a lot of siloed manual processes, right? A lot of pen and paper, Excel files, things like that, things not talking to each other. Data was not very accessible. This caused a lot of errors, right? Anytime you have humans interacting with that much data in that many places, just increases the chance for error and inaccuracy and inconsistency. Similar idea with managing policies and rules on campuses. Really hard to enforce rules when it takes a lot of back and forth emails, phone calls, finding individuals to really go over what they're trying to accomplish and how to make it work in these manual processes without a software solution to really help with that process. And then ultimately introducing best practices, streamlining processes, right? Working with over 100 institutions now, helping institutions to really understand how to be efficient, free up time, focus on some of these strategies that are really impacting the institution as a whole and driving things forward versus just kind of keeping your head afloat and getting things done. Right? Your perspective and experience, how some of these, historical pain points and challenges resonate with your story and what's brought you to where you are today.
Sure. I think you've cut out a little bit, but I think I understood the gist of the question. Our beginning was due to an emergency. So our starting point was a state of chaos and, oh no, what are we going to do? We had a manual scheduling software tool that was on a laptop, and one person managed the process and the person was no longer here. So the office was, when I arrived, I purchased the suite of products when I arrived a little over a year and a half ago. So right in the middle of COVID, when everything was kind of shut down. At that time, our office was 100% transactional. We were seen as processors. The communication was one way, and it really was the department telling us what they wanted to offer and when they wanted to offer it. There was no data that was being used. It was only intuition, and the changes were constantly made to help students reactively. So it wasn't like there was no forecasting, there was no planning. It was, let's see if we can offer these courses. If they have the enrollment, great. If not, we're going to cancel them. And we're going to find the students the courses that they need, or we're going to have to offer an independent study or make adjustments. So it really, the other part of it was a manual process, and there were a lot of errors because it's a lot of data entry. It was difficult to enforce any type of rules because it wasn't an owned process. It was just kind of the community culture that this is how we did it. It was definitely a faculty-centered approach. There wasn't a student-centric focus. And that was no fault to anyone. That's just the way that they had done it, and it had worked. And so when I came on, I really took it as it was our responsibility to make this change and to really bring it up to best practices. So I no longer have a team of processors. I have a team of high achievers, problem solvers, strategic thinkers, and that leaves little time to do data entry, because when you have those type of team members, they don't want to do the data entry. So introducing the best practices and streamlining all of the processes along the way has really helped empower and engage our team to think differently about a lot of different systems and solutions, not just the course dog suite.
Right. And to me, that's really powerful, right? Because you go from this kind of state of, keeping our head above water and just getting these done because they have to be done, versus having something to really be kind of a conduit to freeing up those resources and letting folks really do what they got into higher ed to do. And that's not to enter data and push information around. It's to make a difference, right?
Right.
Awesome. Love that. And so back to kind of our core belief, right? These kind of siloed academic operations, in our opinion, are one of the main root causes of these administrative efficiencies. And there's some downstream effects to student success where those can impact, right? Jen, I'm kind of curious from your perspective, how do you envision the implementation of these best practices and these new processes kind of impacting student success at a bigger picture versus just more of the administrative side of things?
So one of the things that we did right away when we launched with the scheduling software, we started from scratch. We said anything that had happened before, anything that was kind of understood, that was just a general rule, we didn't know about. I was new. I didn't know what the unwritten rules were. I didn't know who had what authority to what rooms. We just basically started from scratch, and we started asking really difficult questions or challenging questions to make people really think about why they were, making the decisions the way they were. We also quit rolling sections. So we forced department schedulers to really think about the courses they were adding and why they were adding it, but we armed them with data to go along with it. So I created reports to show how many majors, how many students had completed the requirements, how many anticipated, graduating. So we really could start thinking more holistically in terms of what students needed to graduate and what was going to be a barrier if they didn't have those requirements. The sun is shining and really bright in my window. I am sorry. So that was one of the things we did. The other piece we did, we identified department schedulers, which we had never done before. So we kind of took the administrative burden or the task off of our area and delegated it out to the decision makers of the academic units. And we armed them and equipped them with the information and the tools to make the decisions and then just relay the information back to us. So because one of the things we really like about CourseDog is the transparency. So everybody can see everything. And because of that, we no longer were the, I have room conflicts, so-and-so's in this room and I'm in here. We would say now, great, have you talked to so-and-so who decides who gets that room? And we started to change the conversation to room to maximize space and occupy the classrooms that make more sense for the enrollment. So users, because everything is kind of same time now and synced with the SIS, we can make last minute room changes a little easier than we could have in the past. So we allow individuals to put in their room assignments, but we really say that they're not final until the week before classes start. And that allows us to kind of play around with some of our capacities and our enrollment numbers. So if we have enough students that we can't offer 2 sections, but if they went to a bigger classroom, we could offer, more seats in 1 section, we will move that class to a different classroom. The other thing that we kind of have a little flexibility with that helped us during COVID was we have outdoor space. So we got really creative with what our classroom space looks like. And because it's sunny and light rain all year round in the 80s, we are able to offer outdoor classroom space as well. And so that gives us a little more flexibility with classroom capacity in some of those larger sections.
Awesome. So it sounds to me like it's kind of transitioning from this culture of, right, just getting stuff done because we have to get things done into this kind of autonomy and empowerment for folks to really drive and take ownership of their process.
Yeah. And I would say the piece about the negatively impact, I think people don't understand. It's really hard to say this negatively impacted the students because it's just one ingredient in the whole, or it's just one piece of the iceberg and we don't really see all of it. What we have seen is we have less changes and we have students registering earlier, which is an indication to us that everything's available and there, and we're not doing all this background shifting and adjusting. And then along with some other tools that we have that we use, we're able to really see what the students intend to take. And then that way we're able to offer classes that the students want to take. It's not necessarily what the faculty want to teach. So we have those conversations too, where this might have been your research or this could be a special topics, but we know that there are courses that continuously are at capacity, have waiting lists, and the students don't get in. So we're able to offer more of those sections to help the students. We're also, with the inefficiencies, I would say the one thing that we've been able to do with CourseDog is create standard meeting patterns and also block out certain times where they're like the prime academic times. So not all the courses are offered during that chunk. We have a non-traditional campus. So the majority of our students are commuter students, and they could be on a bus for 2 hours one way to get to school. And so we have the kind of traditional times that we offer courses, but we definitely go way into the evening and we have courses earlier in the morning. And so what we're able to do is really look at using the heat map and leveraging kind of when courses are offered to kind of break that out and more evenly distribute it. So it's not all at once, or it's not all on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or all on Tuesday, Thursday, just to give a little more space throughout the schedule, some breathing room.
Yep, absolutely. That's big, especially for those kind of commuters and different populations of students.
Yeah.
And so, thinking about those kind of siloed processes, right, and parlaying that into CourseDog's approach. So really, we believe in this integrated academic operations platform, right? All of these things, your catalogs, your curriculum management, your scheduling, even things like demand projections and some higher level academic reporting, are all kind of in this bottled area that we consider academic operations, all sitting on top of what should still be that foundation source of truth, the student information system, right? If there's no conversation back and forth there, then it's just kind of another point solution, additional tool that kind of sits on its own. So this is kind of how we view this entire thing, working together under one hood while seamlessly talking to, in your case, Jen, colleague, but obviously other student information systems that live out there. So different schools have different needs, obviously different priorities when it comes to these sort of solutions. Kind of curious to hear your perspective and your approach as you looked at CourseDog. You obviously went with the full suite, but how you kind of approached based on the school's priorities, strategic initiatives, like how do we want to approach this process of implementation, right? This is a lot to ask of functional users, of you and your team, of the IT team. So just would love to hear a little bit more about your process and your thinking as it went into this.
Sure. So the one thing that I love about CourseDog is in the suite of products is everything is together. And so there are other scheduling software tools. There are other curriculum management tools. But CourseDog, everything talks to one another. And as an end user on my side, I'm in CourseDog every single day. But the end users, the department schedulers, the catalog editors, anyone making room reservations, they may get in 1 or 2 times a semester. And so what's important is the ongoing training. And what I like is it all looks the same and it's all consistent. So there's one login, the tools look the same. It's very intuitive. So you're not having to remember all these different pieces. It's kind of it all looks familiar to those end users that we rely on to gather all of the information. That's probably the biggest piece that I liked about it. When I was looking at products, I probably looked at four or five. I already kind of knew we were going to go with CourseDog because I had been following them at my previous institution when they had first launched. And at that time, we had a very sophisticated kind of plan. We had just launched some new products and we weren't in a space to be able to kind of switch over to a new product. But what I like about CourseDog is everything can kind of be broken up in chunks. So the way that I looked at this was the online catalog was a very easy launching point for me. I was new. I needed to learn the catalog anyway. So I kind of took that on as my own personal project. I had already done an online catalog implementation. So I knew that we were going to I kind of knew what we were going to do and how CourseDog would upload our current catalog, which was a PDF, and how I would just have to edit and make some minor adjustments and some navigation type edits. So I went ahead and did that on my own. Another thing I liked about CourseDog when breaking it up in the chunks was most of the information I could pull myself. So while I needed IT to do the integration to colleague, I didn't need them to pull the queries, to pull the CSV files. I could do all of that on my own with the access that I had within my functional area. So it wasn't a heavy lift for IT, which has limited resources and competing priorities. So that piece was nice. When I say I broke it up into chunks, The academic scheduling was probably the biggest piece because we didn't have a tool and we had to have something. So we did that quickly. At the same time we were working on the scheduling, I was working on the catalog. The curriculum management piece came last, but that took a lot more of a behavior change from end users because they were used to a paper process. That also impacted more faculty who weren't in the day-to-day of the catalog or the scheduling piece. Those were department schedulers. So strategically, I said, let's train the faculty last because the department schedulers typically ended up being the admins and they were already there kind of offering support and already knew some of the tools. So they were a great resource to have to help. But then they also, it kind of built up this loyalty and this love for the product because they saw the online catalog and they, were blown away with how much better it was than what we currently had. And then we went to the scheduling piece where they were part of the process and they really started to like that piece of it. So then we just kind of added more as we went. The event management piece, I would love to use it for our entire campus, but right now we're only using it for our classroom space. So the classrooms, anything that's reserved in a classroom outside of the actual sections is done through there. And this really allows student groups, and then any departments that want to host meetings. It allows them to go in and do this without our help. They can just go in and do it. This also allows a lot of transparency, again, for who's using our space and when. So what we do is security has access to this, facilities, IT, so they can block off times when they're going to renovate classrooms. Security can unlock the classrooms when they know people are going to be using them. And it just offers one place where before we were sending daily reports to people, letting them know who was in spaces. And it just completely removed the human piece of doing all of that. And it kind of gave ownership to other people to pull the information that they needed. The academic reporting piece, we haven't used a lot of reporting yet because we just connected to our SIS. We did it manual the first go arounds, and that was by choice. We had a couple things that we needed to clean up, and I wasn't ready to connect it to the SIS until we got some of our back end kind of processes and policies cleaned up. And so we will start using more of those reporting features now that we're connected and have that historical data. But that was one piece that I really liked about CourseDog. There are other products out there that you pay an additional fee to use this feature. And until your team and your department schedulers, your deans, until they're used to making data-driven decisions, this tool and this feature can be very daunting, and people don't want to look at it. And so it takes a little bit of building into, but we're starting to get there with some of the course demand pieces. But it's nice that it's there, and as people are comfortable, they can get in there and start to use the tool on their own.
Yep, absolutely. And I think one thing that you hit on that's probably at the top of everyone's mind, I know it instantly comes to my mind. One thing I think you've done a really great job of there at Chaminade is kind of this idea of change management, right? There's a lot of new things coming at folks, whether it's faculty, your team, different staff members. And you've kind of touched on it. How have you kind of approached that process in implementing the solution?
So I think here, one of the easiest things was people were ready for something. I don't know if they were ready for all of this because we've probably implemented 8 or 9 different software solutions in the last year and a half. But they knew the way we were doing it wasn't working. And the way we were doing it in a paper process was just a bottleneck process. And there were a lot of errors and a lot of things lost, either in translation or just however. And so I think people were just ready for something new. And what I liked about CourseDog is it could be as simple or it could be as complex as we were going to make it. But what I have done is I started bare bones. We just started with the basics. Like, this is what we need to get this outcome. And then as people get familiar with it, get comfortable with it, start asking more questions, we can add on some more of those features or some more of those kind of logic steps that we necessarily didn't want to throw in right away. But I would say, if you're on the fence, or you're thinking about a new software solution, or maybe you're not even considering it right now, but you're just thinking, you're just checking it out to see what's new. You're not alone. Any implementation can be a very daunting task, but I would just suggest breaking it up into smaller chunks. And again, with the change management piece, I went ahead and just did the catalog because I knew that wasn't something that people really looked forward to doing every year. And I wanted to build it, and I wanted to learn. So that was kind of like my peace offering with everybody. Like, I did this, and I kind of showed them that way, and I rolled that out. But then I asked myself, what has to be done now? Like, what do we need right now? And that was really the scheduling piece. What can wait? And that was the curriculum management piece. What part of it can I do on my own? And what do I need support doing? So how do I onboard other people? Again, I had a really new team, a really green team, and it was in a culture where people weren't used to really looking at technology as a way to kind of support the business end of things. So I brought people on board that were early adopters. I gave them super user access. I let them kind of play around and see what they could do. And then they would share that with other people. And the people that it took a little slower to onboard, we just kind of walked them through the process the first couple of times, from the catalog to the scheduling, the curriculum management piece we're doing now. But the change needed to happen, and really it's the pace that we're going to continue to move. So although it seemed like a lot at first, like everyone's kind of getting on board because we're not slowing down, because when you slow down, you get behind. And so it really was a different mindset that we had to think about. And then really how we shift our work, because we went from all the data entry to really supporting solutions. So how do we break up the team to be able to focus on these different things? And so we really had to take back end people that were used to doing process data entry. Now they were our trainers. They were going out into the campus and training our end users on how to use all of the solutions. So it took a little bit of time, but again, this was only a year and a half ago, and we've gone live with all of these. We have a small team, small and mighty, but it's definitely doable. At a larger institution, I would say there was probably no way I could have gone live and done a manual upload or a manual process. I would have had to wait for the SIS integration, which also was a very easy process. But I was able, because we have a smaller campus, we were able to kind of manage it side by side and clean up data as we were going.
Yeah, I really like that. I'm picking up the themes here. A lot of it comes back to aligning to your strategic priorities, right? Understanding catalogs and scheduling are the first big needs. Letting things happen kind of organically, right? Letting folks get in there and really take ownership and autonomy of it. I think that's a surefire way to gain support and advocates there on campus of this change.
The other piece that sometimes schools will ask me about when they're looking at CourseDog is the integration, like how easy it is to integrate. And this is my third integration with a scheduling platform that I've done. This was by far the easiest. So CourseDog works with a third party end-to-end integration, and also the institution, so Chaminade, and we would get on calls, and it was everything was already mapped out. So it was just really configuring our site on our end to make sure everything matched up. That took some support, some help from IT, but it wasn't a heavy lift. Like traditionally in my role, I would have just had to wait and I was at the mercy of IT to figure it out and then come back and we would test it again. That's not how it works with CourseDog. CourseDog schedules meetings, working meetings where we share our screen, and the engineers and the end to end, they're all there and we're all working through and troubleshooting together. So we hardly ever left a meeting without coming up with a solution. Or we would have homework where we would go back and try to investigate. But CourseDog just was so thorough and just really kept us on target to get that integration up and running. It was so easy. I talk about it. I go on and on about it when I talk to people that are potentially interested, because it seems like too good to be true that it actually happened that way. So that is definitely one of the selling points is their customer service and just the launch to make sure you successfully launch. And then it's not like wash your hands, goodbye. There's monthly follow-ups to say, how are you doing? What are you, how are you working through this? Any questions? So there's just that continuous look at, are we improving? Are we doing what we're supposed to, what we said we wanted to do? And then what the follow-up is from there.
Definitely. And so ultimately, you're right. What we're trying to do, and what we, one of the bigger themes around higher ed lately has been really improving student experience, right? We know the last year or 2 years have really opened eyes as far as things we're doing on campus. And one way that we see to kind of innovate in this space is also innovating within your academic operations, right? Like we've kind of talked about so far. So making sure things are data-driven, supportive technology, right? Student-centric is kind of at the forefront of everything we're doing to make sure ultimately downstream does have that positive impact on students. And then just kind of bring it full circle, Jen. I'm kind of curious, like you said, you've kind of worked with all these solutions, implemented with CourseDog, the integration. Curious to get some of your, best practices when it comes to like gearing up for this kind of implementation. What type of things are you doing internally as a team or yourself, just to really make sure this is a successful experience for everyone?
I would say the one thing, as institutions are looking at products or looking at platform solutions, there are a couple things that you can be doing in tandem to that. One of them is really looking at your policies and seeing if there's anything that doesn't really align or is outdated, because you don't want the technology to drive your decisions. You want the technology to support your decisions. And sometimes, you get into a new product and it's like, oh, we can't do that. It doesn't do that. And that's not really the way it should work. It should support what we're trying to do, but we also need to make sure that we're kind of up to best practices and our policies are up to standard. And if you have policy committees, that could take a little bit of time. The other thing to do is really start to talk about it kind of as a vision, to say, if we had something, this is what it could potentially do, and kind of always start to circle the conversation back to that, what if we had this? So you start to get other people to think about it. Outside of our areas, a lot of people aren't thinking about this stuff because it's just a small piece of what they do. So it's our responsibility to kind of share, this is how it could be helpful. So not only cleaning up the policies, but what is the current kind of campus culture? How do people handle course scheduling now? How do people visualize space? Do departments own classrooms? Is that really the best practice? How do people schedule? When I started doing this at a different institution, we had over 1,700 meeting patterns, and every single department had a reason why they needed a special meeting pattern. But what they didn't realize was how much that impacted the students' ability to get the courses they need and to just have like a nice cohesive schedule. And so luckily with COVID here, not luckily with COVID, but because of COVID, we were able to just kind of stop some of those. So we had to change our classroom capacity, and we said, these are the only times you can offer classes because we need the classroom space to offer more sections. So that worked in our favor because we never reverted back to the old way. And Course Dog helped us kind of stay on that track because we only have the standard meeting patterns as options for them. But really, if that's a bigger conversation, I went through a process where we had to go through approvals for 2 years to say, does this need approved? Does this need approved for a special meeting pattern? And eventually, everything was approved. So we were saying, why are we even trying? I mean, like, we're just running into a brick wall. So if you think that you're able to change that, like this solution could really help kind of enforce it. And if not, the solution works also. You can have workflows, you can have an approval process. So it could work either way. But really, the other thing to think about is what else is new happening at your institution? What other products are launching that could potentially make people go into a complete, kind of technology overload if they're not used to it. And like I said, we have launched a student success platform. We've launched Course Dog. Faculty have a new platform where they're entering all their learning outcomes and assessment. There are, like I said, we've done 8 or 9 here, and it's really been overload. Luckily, Course Dog was one of the first ones, so we kind of got people at the beginning. But as we're kind of showing new features, you can definitely see a little burnout. And on the faculty side, rightfully so, as they've transitioned to all online, to hybrid, to in the classroom, there's just a lot of unsettling kind of issues, and people are burnt out. So just really think about all of the different pieces before. And those are the things that you can do up to. And then if there is a lot of burnout or people are tired, like, start with the pieces that you can do on your own, the catalog, for instance, or some of the curriculum pieces. So it isn't like, here's all the pieces, do it all at once. Really, I would suggest breaking it up into smaller chunks as people are ready.
Yep, definitely. And, it's one of those things where, one of the things that I think is really impactful about the approach that we take with implementation, and it sounds like this was your experience as well, is kind of blend that mix of right, utilizing what you have so far, your existing policies, your processes, blending those into Course Dog, but at the same time kind of offering some best practices, right? And saying, like, are you really thinking about this, the way you should be? And we'll challenge you a little bit, we'll push back if we think maybe a deep, hard look in the mirror is necessary. And sometimes those can be hard conversations, but as we know, that's generally where innovation comes from, right? And continuing to move the institution forward.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then so you've hit on this a lot already, kind of our approach, right? The consultative support, the guided implementation, and how we approach that. You've shared kind of your experience with it so far. I'm curious to get your take. What are you really looking forward to now as things are starting to progress? Folks are getting more comfortable with some of these tools on campus, right? Things are getting more integrated. I guess, what are you thinking and seeing for the future of these tools and how it's going to help Chaminade continue to move forward?
I think as we look at new features, and this kind of goes back to the customer, the support, and that commitment. So I'll start from the very beginning when I talk about the customer support. So Course Dog, the team really tried to understand how we were doing business and what that looked like. And there were times that I would be in the scheduling and it wasn't working. And I would be so frustrated that I could hear them saying, this is not best practice. And I knew it wasn't best practice, but I couldn't fix it because I had so much other stuff to do. And the example I'm thinking about is we had over 11 terms, and they were terms within terms. And along the way, everybody just decided they needed their own term. And there was just, I mean, our clearinghouse reporting was a nightmare. There's just no way we could have ever done room scheduling with all of these terms. I had to consolidate. And that took about a year because I had to convince people we were going to these 2 term codes. But in that process, CourseDog would remind me, this really isn't best practice. And I heard them, but I needed a solution. And so it wasn't like CourseDog said, our product doesn't do this for you, or this won't work, and you have to figure it out. They always came to the table with solutions, and the solutions were more of a heavy lift on my end, but that's because it wasn't designed to do it the way we were doing it. So I knew I had to live with it short term until I got to that best practice solution, which is really what I needed. And it was more motivating because I knew the software was going to work, and it was going to be easier, if a lighter lift, I should say, if we kind of got into those best practices. I also, comparing it to some other platforms that I've used, the customer support is beyond any expectation that I ever imagined having with a company. So, you come up with ideas, you're in the product, you're working on it. You're like, oh, it'd be really cool if it could do this, or if it had this feature. And the next thing you know, a couple months later, you're getting an article where you're getting like the weekly updates, and you see where the new feature was added. It's very informative. I'm trying to think of some other examples. The curriculum piece, the forms, like you design your form and you kind of own the content. So you don't have to go back to a developer and say, I need to add this field. I need to, do this. And then you have all these additional developer fees and all this, additional cost associated with it. You kind of control all of that on your end. And I like that piece of it as well. In addition to the implementation team and that kind of support there, and then the continued support, there's also the help desk support. There's like the knowledge hub where you can go and look for information as well. I'm probably looking forward to some more of the data and the strategy behind it. We're very much as an institution still in the day-to-day. And as I'm pulling away from that, I'm kind of looking now bigger picture, like what other areas can this solution help support? So thinking like less traditional kind of registrar type functions, and what other areas can we use this? Can we pair it with our student success tool, and can we share data, and where does that go? And just really thinking about it kind of bigger picture.
Yeah, that's great. And that's exactly what my next question was, right? We kind of talked about where you've been so far, how it's helped, but really what you're looking forward to in the future, right? As we kind of expand this idea of academic operations and driving Chaminade forward. So that's really helpful. Yeah. Anything else there you'd want to add?
I would just say, when you're looking at the product, again, one of the things that I was able to do, which was an easy sell, is when you kind of get the price tag, I was able to break it down to say, this is how much this person makes, and this is what they do with their time. Like, it costs this much money to build a schedule. It's talking like human pieces of it. And this is what it could save. So this wasn't a solution that got rid of people. It just really let go of some of those tasks that they were able to do. I don't want to say more meaningful work, more impactful work is what they were doing. So we definitely wanted to be more high touch. We wanted to be more visible to the students. We didn't want to be kind of a back end office where nobody saw us. And this really allowed us the opportunity to kind of come out of the office because we weren't doing all this back end processing. And then looking forward, like when we look at who we're hiring in the future, again, we're really looking for solutions, systems, thinkers, innovation. We're looking for strategy. We're not looking for processors. And so those bigger things are going to keep those people, energized. It's going to keep a lot for them, they're not going to want to do the data entry very long to stay kind of satisfied and challenged in their roles.
Yeah, so you're bringing people in to say, here's the impact you're going to have at Chaminade, right? Versus like, here's the processes you're going to have to manage.
Right.
Yep, totally get that. Awesome. Well, I want to jump into like a quick little 5-minute overview just to kind of to show the platform for any folks who haven't seen it, and then we can open it up for questions. Any other pieces you want to add, Jen, before we jump into that and start poking around? I mean,
go right ahead.
Interject, and if you have input on any of these items, by all means, throw it in. And again, I'll keep this really high level, right? We're not going to dive deep into anything here, but just kind of want to introduce those folks that haven't seen it to what it looks like and how it feels. So I've kind of talked about how all of these tools are housed under the same hood. Obviously, the integration with the student information system is key, right? We want data flowing back and forth. Changes you make in CourseDog, update the student information system, also reading that information. When it comes to curriculum management, this is going to be, like Jen mentioned, where you're kind of housing your workflows, your forms that you have access to update at any point that you need to. They're really yours to own. Obviously, after implementation, we kind of go through that hand in hand. But what's really great is again, to Jen's point, you don't need a developer, you don't need to know code to update some of these configurations in the functionality, right? If you want to add a new field to a curriculum change form, right, it's as simple as drag and drop. You can update labels, you can say whether it's required or not. Should only certain user roles have access to see this, to edit this, adding in some of those dynamic actions so the form kind of adjusts and manipulates as the user is filling it out. Just really trying to make it a streamlined experience, both from the end user perspective, the person submitting it that again isn't in there every day, doesn't know into the weeds like some folks do, but also flexible enough for those admins, those super users, to come in and update workflows as they need to, right? Something changes in your process, you want to go in and add a new step or manipulate who needs to see what needs to happen, just a streamlined process. And to Jen's point earlier, as we're looking at things like approval workflows, we know there are workflows in kind of all of these processes, right? There are different levels of approvals, whether we're talking about scheduling, catalog updates, curriculum management, right? And the workflow tool is kind of identical throughout, which again makes that user experience from an administrative perspective really simple. If you know how to update a workflow in scheduling, you can do the same in curriculum, vice versa. Really easy to kind of manage that entire process. And then on the scheduling side of things, really what we're looking to do is make this easy for users to come in and say, okay, I'm building the schedule for this upcoming term. Let me add a new instructor. Let me change a meeting pattern. Let me look at available rooms and resources and kind of ensure I'm assigning the best fit room based on all of these details, right? What room features do we need? What capacity sizes do we need? Are we avoiding those conflicts like double booked instructors, double booked rooms, right? All of those things happening proactively versus reactively. And then pairing that with some powerful reporting and analytics. So you really know from a space utilization perspective, how are we really utilizing our classrooms? Do we need to build extra space, or are we just not utilizing it appropriately? Looking at scheduling distribution, are we really bottlenecked during those prime time hours? Again, kind of freeing up that schedule and distributing it so students can get into courses they need versus everything being Tuesday through Thursday from 10 to 2. Enrollment data, so understanding, do we have underfilled sections, overfilled sections? Do we need to take action on those, right? And then kind of pairing that into where we're going with this is some ideas of projecting demand, right? Getting ahead of these things and being proactive to know how many students need a section or need a course in a given term, and understanding where those need to go, how many sections we need, so on and so forth. So really taking that big picture approach, using data to help drive some of these decisions, right? And a tool to really help manage these processes. And then again, since we have all this data, right, we're capturing curriculum data, we're integrating with the student information system, those can be displayed on that public catalog. So nobody has to go in when a course changes or a program has new requirements and manually update a PDF, manually update the student information system, right? It happens in one place, goes through that governance process, and then is disseminated across the board wherever that that course and section and program information needs to live. So again, just kind of this idea of this academic operations suite, things talking to each other, things flowing within one another, looking at rooms, right? We're all looking under the same hood. So it's just, it makes a good user experience, flows together seamlessly, and hopefully helps kind of enact some of those innovative changes on campus there. So again, that was incredibly high level. I don't want to go into the weeds with this. We're always happy to go into the weeds on other conversations. But at this time, I think with a few minutes left, I'd love to open it up for questions or any other comments, Jen, you'd have, and just have a quick conversation if there's anybody that has questions out there. And feel free if you want to throw them in the chat in the Q&A. Can be for Jen, for me, for anything. Always happy to help here.
I would say, as we're waiting to see if anyone has questions, I think the workflow is the nicest feature, one of the nicest features, because again, you can control it. And I was a banner school previously, and we had a whole workflow, hundreds of workflows, and people would always get stuck in a workflow, and you would have to go in like this back end way to see where they were in the workflow, what was happening. And this is, again, transparent. You can even set it that if somebody doesn't approve something within a certain amount of time, it automatically goes to the next person. It just keeps it flowing. And you can also edit the workflow message. So in the beginning, I was getting emails saying, I don't know why I'm getting this. Like, why did I get this email? So after reminding people that was what we had decided on as a group, I changed it. So I used more of the Hawaiian vocabulary, and I, said, you don't need to do anything except review, like no vote required. And I just spelled it out. But again, because those users aren't in there all the time, they don't know what the different email workflows look like. And then it's really easy. We have on the back end of the very end of the workflow is a vice provost, a provost, a president. And those are more like the official check boxes of a new program. And they're never in the system. So it's really nice that the workflow will just click and direct them to where they need to go. And they have everything they need right there. But at the same time, we were doing this whole process, this whole onboarding of the solution, we also went 100% paperless. So we have no paper forms anymore. And this really allowed for everybody to be notified that there's a change. And departments weren't now proposing courses and new programs and bringing a packet full of materials to a meeting printed off for everybody to see. Everybody can now go in and see what this is or how this is laid out in the same form, and then we can all have the discussion about it.
That's great. And a question came through from Crystal here. So when used as a banner school, and I'm not sure you actually used CourseDog when you were a banner school, building the programs or courses manually in Banner, or the software doing it. So
yeah, we build them manually, but there are so many nuances with major courses, counting with minors, gen eds, like that's pretty much the coding end. And we do that manually. And the eval also, whether you use like the eval that's in Colleague or you use DegreeWorks, there are so many customizations to how you want the audit to look for the student. The tool wouldn't be as beneficial. I think there's other uses that would be more beneficial than having that part just build out automatically.
Yeah, that's a good call. There's a lot of nuance to it. And CourseDog it can be built within the platform, right? Within that integration, since we're sending data back and those governance processes can occur. It really comes down to the school and the process and how that's going to work. Again, taking a big picture, things like degree audit, like you mentioned, and scribe codes and all of that fun stuff. So yeah, it's a big conversation to have for sure.
But the same person, another way we kind of broke up this solution in our office was to really look at the users who were supporting it. So we have one person that's doing the scheduling piece and the room reservations, and we have another person that's doing the curriculum piece. And one that's so not only one person kind of understands it, so other people understand the products, just for, to sustain the knowledge and everything. But it really kind of broke up the work to focus on different areas where people could really specialize and really understand and get into the technical enhancements and all of the different things that we could do with it. If it was just me doing it all, there wouldn't be enough time to really focus on all of those, but kind of breaking it off into smaller chunks for the team seemed to be a little more empowering and gave people kind of the independence to do what they wanted to do with it.
Makes total sense. Got a couple minutes left here. If anybody has any other questions, happy to answer those. Otherwise, give you a minute or two of your day back here. Give it a few seconds here, see if any others trickle in. And doesn't look like anything. Awesome. So with that said, appreciate everyone's attendance, and Jen, really appreciate your time and insights. This was super beneficial to me, hopefully to everyone else here. And yeah, just again, thanks for all of your hard work and for being a great partner institution for us.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Awesome. Thanks, Jen. Thanks, everyone.